to see it. Yeah, thank you for for reminding this. Yeah, hope it will be helpful. Okay, yeah, maybe have some questions about Node.js or NPM or some models that we were discussing last time. Okay, it looks like there is no question. Then we can move on. So, yeah, first of all, let's talk about client-server architecture. Yeah, as you can see, there are a lot of text, but
one
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Chat.
Okay, I see. How many way client can request a file? I'm not sure that I understand the question. Can you please give some more details? You mean? Okay, yeah. Actually, the two like rules you wrote there, like home and index HTML. During the development on Node.js, you're responsible for adding some logic to these endpoints. Yeah, and for example, you can return the file when someone use like /home endpoint, or you can just return not a file, you can just return some JSON data or some text data or HTML and so on and so on. So you can use any route you want. You can use /home /1 /user /someone else, and the logic is also absolutely configurable. So that's why you can use you can you can make anything you want, and yeah, of course you can return the file. Yes, you'll see URL just as a string, and you will use it to get the data. It's I think we'll discuss it a little bit later when we will be talking about HTTP protocol. But yes, like the URL is just a string, and when you're using some service, let's say you're going to use some Facebook API, you'll be needed to have like instructions, the documentation, where you can see, for example, like this URL, let's say /user /ID user will be used for getting user data. Another one for getting, I don't know, some channels, group, likes, and so on, comments. And you will have just URLs and the data that you need to send. And in this documentation, you will see what data you will receive. So yeah, all this is configurable. Yeah, and during using some services, you'll be need to read the documentation and get the like info how will it work. I hope I answered your question. Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, talking about client-server architecture in like it's very simplified version of the architecture that we are like using in our world. So, for example, when you write your server, when you write your API service, yeah, you will have only one server, and you might have a huge number of users, and all those users we can name them as a clients, yeah, and they can be used any kind of device. It can be smartphone, can be just a computer, can be a tablet, or even it can be something that is not really simple. Let's say it can be some IoT devices, and all these things they are just clients, and the server is just a one or several like physical servers. And the idea is just like all clients, they are the same. They will use the server that you like wrote. It's a very simple architecture, because in practice the server part is not just like one. As you can see here, we just have one icon here, but in practice it can be really huge infrastructure with a lot of different databases and services and so on. But if we look at this stuff from the high perspective, we'll see just a client and just a server. Yeah, talking about client-server architecture, client-server architecture works when the client computer sends a resource, like sends a request to the server. In most cases, it will be used, network will be used for the transport. Yeah, so the front end will send the request and the backend will send the response for this request. So in this picture, you can see that front end will might take like 20% of the effort and backend 80%. I would say it's very like approximate numbers, because in practice we also might have a very complicated front end, and not, for example, if you're developing some, I don't know, game, or let's say Photoshop in your browser, yeah, it definitely will be complicated on front end as well. But in most cases, backend will take more effort, because all like logic related to data, related to some connections between some resources and so on, will be located into backend part. So yeah, talking about client server, of course, like backend is our server and frontend is our client. Here we have a little bit more detailed picture of how client-server architecture works. So we have a user. It's just any person who has some devices. It can be, as already said, it can be mobile phone, it can be computer, laptop, tablet, anything, even the watch, I mean smartwatch that can have an access to the internet. And when this user opens, let's say, some web page, or opens some application, let's say Teams, it, like during opening, like Teams, browser, all of this, it's a front end. But when a user makes something, it's needed to get some data from server, and like all these applications will make the request to the server, and the server is our like backend, and the server has data, has databases, has some files, has some I don't know, some information about the user, and some of this data will be returned to the front end, and when you like open the browser, the request will be made, and you will see the site. Yeah, if you're authorized, you will see some your data, for example, like your name, your comments, your friends, if you're talking about some social media website, and all this data came from server, and front end is needed just to show this data to the user. And of course, when the user want to make some actions, he'll be needed to interact with front end. But when he makes any action, server will get a request, and everything will be computed on the server. So front end is just for user to make it possible for a user to easily work with our like data and so on. Yeah, here just like small comparison with multi-page applications and single-page applications. Yeah, just a quick note. So single-page application is when you have when you open the page, you receive the HTML file, and inside this HTML file you will have everything you need. Like you will get the whole site. For example, let's talk. Let's have an example. Let's say Facebook. When you open the Facebook, and if Facebook has a SPA approach, during the opening the page, you will get the HTML file, and inside this HTML file, you will have JavaScript. And when you load this, you have all pages on your laptop. It means when you go from the like, I don't know, my profile page to my friends page, or to channels page, or to comments page, every like button, every part of the site are already loaded in your computer, and you don't need to get some like HTML data. You don't need to get some how to say so yeah, like the whole application is loaded in your page in your computer. And when you go to the comment section, the only thing that you're needed to see the comments is just the data. You just need to have a list of users who left the comments and the comments that they like, the content of these comments. And for this to get this information, you will make an Ajax request. Yeah, this request will just have some, in the response you will just have some data. It's just a string. It can be even small requests. Yeah, and after all this data is on your computer, your front end will get this data and like render comment section. When we're talking about multi-page application, when you open the page, the whole data will be loaded after opening this page. And when you open, for example, comment section, you will receive the whole like site, the whole HTML file. And when you go to my friends page, the new HTML file with the data will be returned to front end. And the difference between these approaches is like how we receive the like HTML data, the site data. Yeah, and yeah, in single page applications, we just receive data during navigation and inside our site. But in multi-page application, we receive every page on every request. Okay, so here just a small example of development life cycle. So in most cases, development life cycle has 6 parts. In first part, we just receive some requirements, analyze everything, and decide, can we do this, how many people we need, and so on and so on. In the second part, we can design, and it doesn't mean you need to like have a design of your site. It can be some technical design, architecture design, and so on. And the third part, and it's like the most interesting part, I think the most interesting part for you is implementation. On this part, you'll be need to write a code to create the site or the server and or the service. Yeah. um, then it's testing. Here you can see that in the text testing we have like Jest, Mocha, Chai. It's libraries for Node.js that you can use to test your to write a test on your code. But actually, like these tools will be used in implementation phase. In testing is more about manual testing, when some QA engineers will be responsible for using your service, using what you did, and understand whether it's working correctly or not. So on the 5 section, on the 5 step, we have some deployment stage. We need to, when we write everything, we need to show this to our users, and we'd like to deploy it to some server, to the internet. And yeah, Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, all these tools can be used for that. But again, it's more like DevOps job. And the last part is maintenance. When you did everything, like all users already using your site, your application, but of course, some problems may appear during the using this, even if you don't add or remove anything or change anything. Yeah, because we might have some issues with some services that we are using, or even we might have some bugs that we on the like testing stage we didn't find. So yeah, it's maintenance stage. And like in projects, like this cycle might be it depends on the methodology that can be used, but the cycle might be from, I don't know, 1 week, yeah, when we add a small feature during this 1 week, to the several years when during this life cycle we finish our application. It depends just on the methodology and the approach that used on the project. Okay, so yeah, now we'll talk about HTTP. And HTTP, it's like HTTP stands for the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's an application level protocol. Yeah, there is OC layers. Yeah, it's a standard when we have some layers, and for each layers we can have some protocols. For example, the lowest level is responsible for some physical stuff like moving some data through cables, and the highest level is about doing, for example, yeah, the application, the highest one, and HTTP, we don't care about how our data will be transferred, but we care what will be inside this data, what we are going to transfer, how we get the information. And yeah, HTTP is application level protocol, so it can be used for getting and sending some data. And the image, you can see we have a client and the server, and we make a request to the server through the internet, and the server will return the response. So this cycle is just an HTTP request and response. Inside the request, we need to provide several things. The first one is a method. So in this example, we can see that we use post method, but there are some more methods such as get, put, patch, delete, and so on. I've named the most popular ones, but sometimes you need to use some, I don't know, specific ones. So after that, you need to provide some like URL information, the endpoint. Yeah, for example, here we have home. It means that we'll go to endpoint/home, then HTTP version, but yeah, one thing I want to say before, you don't need to like use to write this string during development. Yeah, you'll be using some utils that you'll just use, for example, Axios, and use method post, and under the hood Axios will create such thing as post, then slash, then some URL and so on. You don't need like to create this request by yourself, but it's important to understand what parts the request has. And yeah, then we have version of our protocol. In this case, we have HTTP 1.1. Then we have headers. So headers is also important part. Inside headers, we might provide some metadata. For example, we can use content type header to provide the data we are sending. Yeah, for example, if we are sending some text, we can just use the text content type. If we send some images or JSON or XML data, we just provide this data in content type. Headers also can be used for providing some tokens, some authorization information, cookies, and so on. It's like metadata. And the last thing, it's a body. It's the most like interesting part, because inside body we'll put some data we would like to send to the server. For example, when we creating the user, we'd like to provide the data. For example, what the user, what the name user will have, first name, last name, age, and so on. All this data will be needed to provide in body. So after the request is sent, the server will send response to us. Inside the response, we will have the next things. The first one is, of course, the method of HTTP, because it might be possible that, for example, some servers doesn't support the HTTP method we are expecting to use. For example, we might want to use HTTP version 3, but the server doesn't support this method, and yeah, the difference will be sent in the response. But again, you don't need to care about this. All libraries already have these things under the hood. And in the response, you also see the response status code. In that case, you can see that it's 200, but there are more statuses. It's like 3 numbers. If the first number is 2, it's okay. It means that it doesn't matter which one, like 200 or 204 or 201. All statuses that start from 2, they consider it as success statuses. So the statuses that start from 4 is user error. It means that you made a wrong request for some reasons. It can be, for example, you don't have access to this data, or you provide a wrong data in body. And the 500 statuses, they mean that there are some problems, there are some issues in the server. So they mean that you did everything okay, but the server has some issues and so on. In the response, we also have headers. Again, just the meta information. For example, we can send the information about what content type we send back in the body, what the length of this content, and so on. And we also have a message body. Again, the same thing like in request, but in response. Okay. Yeah, a quick note about URI, like URL, URN. So yeah, here you can see some meaning of like difference between URI and URL, but in practice nobody cares about it, because everybody just uses URL in most cases, and it can be mean everything, but yeah, in most cases it's not a problem, but yeah, of course we actually have the difference between that, and you can see it on the screen. Okay, let's go to the next one. Here just some types. These types can be used in content type header. I previously explained to you that we can use content type header to provide the information about the body that we are sending or we are receiving. So here, for example, if you'd like to say to the server, like server, we'll send you a text format body. So in that case, you'll be needing to use text/plain. If you're going to say that it will be HTML, then text/HTML. And here's just example of the most popular ones, but of course we have a lot more of them. Okay, so the next one is REST. We have HTTP. It's just a protocol for like communication between server and client. You can use endpoints, as already said, like /home, /home24, and so on. And there is also REST. REST is representational state transfer, and the idea of this REST is to like to give rules how you can use an HTTP. For example, in the REST, there is a resource. It means that, for example, if you have a server that can be responsible for some for user management, for example, yeah, you can, if you're using HTTP, you can do any endpoint you want. For example, you can use / create a new user endpoint and use, for example, post method for that. Yeah, and when you want to create a user, you need to use post and create a new user / create a new user endpoint. That's okay, but REST is about getting using some standards. If you want to make some operation with some resource, you need to first use the resource name and then use the like specific maybe action, maybe ID of this resource. And the resource is just an entity. For example, we're talking about user management. User is a resource, and if we want to add the user, we'll be needed to use just /user. It shows that we are going to manipulate some user data. Then using the method or methods of HTTP, we can provide the information about what we are going to do with the user. For example, if we use post method, it means that we are going to create a new user. If we use a put method, we can use this method to update the user. So the rest is for like making this more standard. And for example, if you'd like to get a specific user, you might use /user/ the ID of the user. And if you're going to receive, like just to get information, you can use a get method. So it's pretty much it about the REST in high level. Of course, there are some more specific stuff like client server architecture. So there are some principles of REST, but in most cases, the thing that I've explained to you now, it's like the most important part of the REST for like nowadays. Okay, next one is okay. It's like let me check. Yeah, then we'll go a little bit deeper into Node.js, like the kind of not just the practice, but more stuff, more closer to code. Maybe at this moment you have some questions about the HTTP or about anything else. So I believe you were working with HTTP, yeah, because you had some tasks on front end, and I believe you used some fetch library, not library, but fetch method. You might be using some libraries such as Access or GOT or anything else, and you may be already familiar with HTTP in practice, but maybe you have some more questions. Okay, so the rest is more like theory standard than a thing. Absolutely. So the rest is about rules. Yeah, like when we have application, there is a term restful. We can say that this application is restful because this application uses like REST principles. So it's not about some library or anything else. It's about the principles, rules, and you cannot touch REST. Yeah, it's just a set of rules. Okay, I hope you understand anything from from my explanation. I think we can move forward, and yeah, let's go to HTTP model. Previously in the previous lecture, I already explained you HTTP model a little bit. So this model can be used to create an HTTP server. And as you can see, we just import this model from Node.js. So yeah, it's internal model. You don't need to install it. After that, you can call create server method, and the server will be created, and you're able to add some stuff here, to add some logic here. For example, you can use write head, and you will be able to add the header. And as you can see, we used res variable here. Res represents response, and when we use write head, it means that we'll add a header to the response. We add this write head method, provide the header like content type and text HTML. It means that when we send the response, this header will be in the response. Then we use end. It means that we say like to the express, to the not express, um, to Node.js, like please send, that's all about like response, please send it to client. And yeah, by using this method, we can say it, and we just provide some body here. And as you can see, we provide some hello world here. And if you run the server and go to localhost and this like port, you can see in listen, so you'll receive this hello world in your browser. Okay, so here just one more time about like single threaded approach in Node.js. We have a Node.js server. It's just a server that listens to user requests, and when your request comes, you Node.js just did some stuff with this request, and inside this request you might want to get some information from database or get some information from the another service, and during waiting for the responses, Node.js will wait for another request, and like new request comes, Node.js will do it when the response comes from some server. Node.js will proceed this response and will do some stuff for the first user that is waiting for the response. So that's how Node.js works with one thread. And yeah, as you can see, in most cases, like we don't wait too much. Practice, most servers, they just receive the request, do some maybe mappings, like from the make from one field another one, go to database, go to some server, and return the response. And during this time, if the whole request takes, let's say, 1 second, our JavaScript will be working only 50 milliseconds, and all like rest time will be just waiting for the response from database, for the response from some services. So that's why Node.js will work fine for such for applications when you just have some database. You don't have some CPU bound tasks, you don't have some big computations. So for those applications, Node.js will work fine in one thread without any issues and with a good performance. Yeah, here just a quick slide about what frameworks we have in Node.js. Of course, we have much more of them, but here just the most maybe common ones is Express, with which one we'll be talking about in today's lecture. Then a core. Core is like a next generation of Express. The same developers wrote this core framework, and also Sales. As already said, we have much more like Happy, Meteor, Nest, and so on and so on. But Express, this framework is good for beginning, because this framework doesn't provide a lot of high-level APIs. It just like almost like an HTTP library we have in Node.js, but has little bit more logic, little bit easier to use it. With Express. Okay. Here the example how to start server with HTTP. Again, we have HTTP model. We have some handler, that will be responsible for receiving the request and sending the response. Then we create a server by calling create server method. So server is created, but it still doesn't listen anything, and we need to call listen method. So server.listen and provide the port that we are expecting to have the server. And all this code, when you run it, the server will be up and you will be able to use it. So in Express, the same thing can be done a little bit faster. You'll need just to import Express, then create an instance of Express, and then you can just use some methods, provide some endpoints, and the handler here just inside as the second argument here, and we can provide some response here. Of course, we need to say to the server like start working, and that's why we are using listen method. And actually, even if the code size less for the Express, in practice it's pretty much the same. It's not like why we are using Express, because starting the server, when we start the server with HTTP and Express, will use the same effort, but I will talk later why Express is good. And here it's the reason why you need to use Express. It's routing. If we go to the previous HTTP example, you can see that here we have a request handler. And when our application begins, and we are listening for a new endpoint, for a new request, we have one handler, like one entry point for all requests. And when the new request comes, we need to write the logic inside. Like we need to check if this method is get and the request URL is user slash I don't know 5, then we do this stuff. Else we do another stuff, and we need to do it in one function, what is not really good. And express, yeah, provides us routing. It's like declarative way to say that when the request goes to get and slash user, we want to do this thing, another endpoint this thing. And here we can see how we can do it. So we create an express, then instance of the express, and then we can call app dot and any HTTP method you want to use. For example, the get. We use get method here. Then the first argument, we can provide what endpoints, what routes we are expecting that can be we can like receive. And here we just provide some slash. It means that any endpoint, like if you open like localhost 3000, you don't need to add anything else. Press enter. You will be the code inside this function will be executing because we just provide the slash. The second argument is the function, yeah, that will be executed during the when the request comes to this like get and slash. Inside this function, we can do, of course, some stuff related to, I don't know, maybe go to database, get some data from database, check something, and return the response by using REST object. And yeah, the first one is rec is for request. We can get some information from the request, like, for example, some body from there, some, I don't know, method, and so on. Then we have res, it's response. We can use this method to send back some headers, body, and so on. And next method, it's like, again, is express specific function. And yeah, let me check. I believe we have middlewares. Yeah, I'll like explain deeper about middlewares, but in few words, we have middleware approach when we create when we can create some function that can be used for every endpoint or for only part of them. For example, we want to have authentication, yeah, and when a new request, when we get a new request, we would like to check whether this request has some specific headers. And if not, we would like to do not allow this request. And when we if we have a lot of endpoints, we'll be needed to implement this logic in every endpoint. But by using middlewares, we can provide this logic inside middleware. And after like inside this middleware, and after this middleware is everything is okay, and we see that there is some header we are expecting to have, we might use next, and it means that okay, this middleware is finished and next one can be used. Or if there are no middlewares, this function will be executed. So that's how can we use like middlewares approach, by moving some specific logic, some common logic to the middlewares to avoid duplicating. Here just so here just an example of which part of like request we might see in Express. And yeah, you saw a similar picture previously when I was explaining you HTTP, and here just a quick recap. Yeah, we have a request. Inside the request, we have request line with methods and so on, and we have headers, we have body. In the response, we have status code, we have response headers, and we have body. So all this stuff can be accessed by using express request or express response objects, which you saw in the function, in also in middlewares, and in controllers, in handlers. Yeah. Okay. Here the example of what can we get, what methods we can use in response object. So it's just Some of them, there are some more, but those one the most popular ones. So it's like end method. We can use this method when we want to finish to send the response back. So send method you did the same does the same stuff. We might use send file when we'd like to send not the data, not the string, but the file. We can use JSON. In that case, you can provide some object here, and Express will stringify this object to the string and provide a specific header like content type, application, text, JSON. Then we can use redirect and render. It's also popular methods when you'd like to redirect to another endpoint or use some template engine to render your HTML file. Okay, and to recap what I said before, Express it's also it's very similar to HTTP, but it provides routing, and when you can create a specific logic for a specific routes, and the middlewares when you can move some data. I'm sorry, some logic that can be reused to specific middlewares and run this logic for every or for a bunch of endpoints before doing some specific logic. Okay, a little bit more about middlewares. Yeah, inside middleware you can execute any code. You also have access to request and response objects. You can finish the request. You can, for example, in the previous example that I said, like we have a middleware that might be responsible for identifying, do we need to proceed this request or not? For example, we are expecting that front end should send let's say token in some headers, and inside this middleware we can check whether the token is presented in the header. If not, we'll just send the response with the error. Let's say 401 error, which means that user is not authorized, and it will be sent to the front end, and our handlers won't be like routing won't be used because our middleware sent the response before, and next function won't be like called, and the execution won't go to the next middlewares or handlers. And yeah, if everything is okay, we can call the next middleware, and next middleware will be executed. And here the example, like we have incoming request, then the first middleware, and if everything is okay or not, if everything is okay, we can go next to the next middleware. But if you'd like to send response, we can use rest send without calling next. Yeah, and then the response will be sent to the front end. And of course, we might have as much middlewares as we want, and just call next function in them. Okay. Here, again, one more picture about how everything works in Express when some front-end client, anyone makes a request. It will go to some middlewares. It can be some parsers, yeah, some loggers, some notification checkers. Then we'll have some road handlers that you saw before. Inside these road handlers, we can use some endpoint specific stuff. For example, if we use get for /user /ID user, yeah, we might want to get to database, get some data, user data, and then provide the response. And also, if we are going to use our Express for returning HTML files, we might use res render and provide some HTML with data and send it to front end. Here the example of the endpoint when we use put, yeah, and then /employees. It's like the name of resource and /ID. And for example, we might have the situation like here, yeah, when we want to use like /employees and then / and the ID of employee, yeah. To make it possible in Express, you can provide kind of you can create kind of variable, and you need to provide a column and then the name of the variable. In that case, it's ID. It means when you use like /employee and / any characters endpoint, these characters after the second slash will be put into a specific variable, and this route will be called. And here you can see that we can use rec.params.id, because in params, yeah, we'll have a specific field. The name will be the same like we see in the path, and we can use this variable and provide it to some function, get employee by ID. Since we see like await here, it means that this function is asynchronous, and I think this function can be responsible for getting some data from database or from another services. After everything is okay, inside employee will have the function, we'll have the employee data, and we can check if the employee is not returned, for example, the null inside the employee, yeah, then we call res status for 100. Yeah, it means that there is some error on client side because the first number is 4. Yeah, because the user might provide the wrong ID, yeah, and such user is not exist, or maybe any other reasons. And then we provide the JSON, and then we provide the object, and this object will be sent to the front end in the body. um, uh, but if employee is found, this if won't be executed. We'll go to await employee update, and we update the employee. And to update function, we provide rec.body. So inside this field, we'll have a body. So this body is the body that was sent from client. Yeah, it can be just JSON file, and we provide JSON data, and we provide this JSON to update method, and this data will be updated in database, for example. And after everything is finished, we'll just send to front end like status, okay, everything is fine, and 200 status. If we do not provide any status, 200 status will be used by default. So that's an example of small endpoint that you'll be needed to implement during working as Node.js developers. Yeah, before you seen that React.body was used, but by default, the React.body will have undefined because you need to use Express.json body parser. So it's needed because by default body is empty, and the body is in in buffer format, and to make it possible to see it like an object, you'll be need to use some body parser middleware. And as you can see, we use just app.use, then provide the middleware, and Express has existed middleware named JSON, and you just provide the data here, the middleware here. And after this middleware, you will be able to use rec.body, and if there is a request with JSON body, this data will be in rec.body field. Also, sometimes you'll be needed to send some static data, for example, some files or images. You don't need to provide, you can write the logic, for example, when we have app.get, and then we provide like /static/index dot png, for example, some picture, yeah, then we use res.send files and provide the path to this file and so on, but it's not really you'll have a lot of boilerplate. That's why Express provided a specific middleware that can be used for serving static files. For example, you use, in this example, we have a public directory. Inside this directory, we have some files. For example, as already said, it can be some pictures, HTML files, JavaScript files, anything you want, just the files. And you just use this method, this middleware. And when you open the page and of your server, like localhost, and then / and then public, and then the name of the file that you have in public directory, you'll be able to see the file in browser. So that's how that's how static serving is working in Express. Yes, okay. Next one is one more thing about middlewares, and previously you've seen like static middleware, body parser middleware, JSON middleware, yeah. But sometimes you might be using some middlewares from npm packages, and here you can see that we required a specific Morgan package. This is logger package, and to use it, you just provide a like you just call abuse and provide the middleware inside, and Morgan provides the middleware, and you need just to use Morgan and put some data during calling this function, and the this Morgan function will return a middleware that will be used in your application. So Morgan will be logging all information that you receive and that you send. So it's very helpful middleware. Actually, we often use it on real projects. Okay, so the next one is router, and sometimes you will be needed to separate your logic into different parts. For example, you'd like to have a separate files for user resource, for updating, deleting, creating users. Also, you would like to have some comments resource, and all this logic will be located separately, and you'll be needed to have some specific logic for that endpoints. And to make it easier, Express provides a router. So this router function returns a router object, and you can use a router the same way like you use app. And you just get some endpoint, provide some endpoint, then some middlewares, and so on and so on. And after that, you will be needed to use it with app like a middleware. So it will be helpful when you have, for example, user router. Inside this user router, you provide some routes for user resource, another like comment router. You will provide some logic and some middlewares and routes for comments, and then you just combine them in the one file, and you'll be using like appuse/users user router and appuse/comments router. And actually, it's almost yeah. We have the last slide here, but it's just a small but very helpful package. You can use this NodeMon package when you would like to run your Node.js application. But this package provides like hot reloading. And for example, when you run your application by node then space then index.js, and when you change something in the index file, you'll be need to restart your application. But NodeMon helps you to restart your application automatically. So when you run NodeMon space index.js file and change anything inside index.js file, server will be automatically restarted, and you won't be needed to restart it by your hands. You won't be needed to start the server, then start it again. So it'll be done automatically by this util. So yeah, it's very helpful util, and you can use it. And actually, that's it from my side. Now we have a Q&A section. Maybe you have some questions. Maybe something is not clear for you. I'll be glad to try to explain it. Okay, what is endpoint? Do we use the term for client side or server side? Yeah, 1 second. So endpoint is just it's yeah. First of all, this term is used everywhere on client side and server side. Is just like it's combination of method plus path plus URL. Yeah, for example, get/users. It's an endpoint. And for example, let's say you're working on backend and someone is working on front end, and the front end guy comes to you and says like, okay, I wanna for example have an endpoint that will return all let's say user comments. Yeah, and you said, okay, give me like 1 day. In 1 day, then you come to your front-end developer and say, okay, now we have an endpoint. The endpoint is the next. You need to make the request to the get, like you need to use get method. Let me like write in chat, like get method. And for example, to get user comments, you need to use /users /user ID and /comments. So this is endpoint. It kind of like one point of logic. I mean, um, it's a single part, independent part, which can be used by another clients, and of course, for example, by front-end developers to receive some data or to manipulate some data. For example, when your front-end guy comes to you and says, okay, now I need to data to create a new comment. And in 1 day, you then return to your front-end developer and say like, okay, now we have another endpoint. The endpoint will be the next. You'll be needed to use post endpoint, then like /user /ID and /comments. And in the chat, I've posted another endpoint, and these two endpoints, they look similar because the path, the URL, are the same for both of them, but the method is different. And these two will be different methods, sorry, different endpoints. So that's how we use this term in most cases. And also, if you want to create some, I don't know, you want to integrate with some services. Let's say you'd like to have ability on your application to get the data from Facebook, yeah, or you want to get some data from Twitter, let's say. You'll be needed to use Twitter API, and if you try to find the Twitter documentation API or like getting Twitter by Twitter API, you'll see a similar. Of course, you'll see much more information, but the thing that you need to look for is like method and then path, like the whole endpoint. So Twitter, I guess I haven't used it yet, but I guess Twitter provides such information, and you'll be able to find such things like, okay, if you want to get tweets, yeah, you need to use get, then then twitter.com, then /api /v2 some complicated stuff, and then you will see like /tweets. So that's how we work with this term. Okay, anything else? You, as already said, you can use a microphone, you can raise a hand to ask the question. Okay, so endpoint is a place which has address and way to go to it. BA will create that place from front-end imagination. In general, yes. Okay, it's not like a place because. Okay, we can go this way. We can name this like a place, yeah, and it's like an address more than a place. And the front end guy can use this endpoint, like make the request to this address and receive some data or manipulate by some data. Okay, what the difference between end and send and the res render res end and okay. The difference between res let's go another way. So let me open the here. Yeah. So res.end and res.send, they just send the data from backend to frontend. I don't remember the difference between these two. I think and if you have some more information and maybe when you use some streams, you can use end method. And when you have just an object to send, you can use send method. But in most cases, these two methods can be replace each other. So end and send can be used to finish the request and send information to front end. Send file, this method can be used when we want to send not the string, for example, not the JSON, but when we want to send the file. Then you'll be need to use res send the file and then provide path to the file or even the content of the file. So it also sends the response, but the content of the response and some headers might be added and might be different with another send. So it's just for sending the files. And render method, it's when you want to say send HTML file. Okay, let me maybe show you some. 1 second. I'll try to Google something. Yeah, let me share the screen. I think I'll try to explain by some maybe examples. We have some template engines. Do you see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
Okay, great. So we have a bunch of template engines. For example, we have a pug. What is template engine? For example, we might have okay, pug not a good example. Let's see for handlebars. Okay, it's easier to understand what is template engine by showing this one. Yeah, for example, you might have an HTML file, a lot of HTML files. And for example, one files for this page, another files for advanced topic page, and so on. And this page might have, it can be not just static, but might have some additional data. For example, let's say this star, this star can be different for different users, and you'd like to change the text here. And to make it, you can create an index, an HTML file, but instead of using star here, like text star, you can provide kind of placeholder that you'll be able to fill before sending this file to the front end. And the rules how you can use this placeholder and how you can fill them, they are will be inside these template engines. And for example, one of the most popular ones is handlebars. You can create some index. Let me see the examples. For example, you can have layout HBS file. It's just an HTML. Yeah, it's really the same one like you can see in other sites, but the difference, it's just we have strange things here like block style sheets, a body, and this is actually placeholders. Yeah, you just say like why you can make the same thing, and provide some stuff here, and instead of star you can provide these three symbols, and inside there you can provide some, for example, name. Let's say I don't know, placeholder 1. And during when you create this file for a specific request, let me then show the presentation again. Yeah, and for the specific request, you can use render method. Inside render method, you need to provide the name of the file, for example, index HBS, and then the second argument can be used for the. We have here. So this render method can be used for providing first argument for the providing path to the HBS file, and then the second argument can be used as an object, and inside this object we can provide like placeholder 1, comma, and the column, and then for example some string. And Express will take this file, go through this file, find all placeholders, and for example, Express finds the placeholder, and the placeholder name is placeholder 1. Then Express checks the second argument, the second object, and takes, do we have placeholder 1 in this object? If we do, Express takes the data from this object, and put it to the placeholder, and then at the end of this operation we'll have an HTML file without placeholders, and we send this HTML file to the front end. That's how can we create a multi-page application. We can have we have a lot of pages, and we can have several like files, and every file represents one page, but the data of this file can be filled by this render method. Yeah. Okay, I hope I answered it, but you can read for about template engines and about this method on Express documentation page. Yeah. Anything else? Great. I'm glad that you understand. Okay, so that's don't see any questions. What's middleware? Okay, yeah. Middleware actually is just a function. Let me open the example. It's okay. Let me open the example of middleware. Yeah, for example, Express Static is a middleware. Middleware is just a function that can be executed for every request. And for example, such middleware can be, here we use Morgan. Yeah, Morgan returned the function that will be executed in every request. So this function can do anything. It can be also responsible for sending responses. It can be responsible for logging something. So this is like the logic that should be done before every endpoint or before several of them. And instead of calling the same function inside every endpoint we want, we can create a middleware and say to Express like, execute this middleware before every request. And yeah, that's how middleware works. And the number of middlewares can be unlimited. And here, the example, for example, we receive the request, then the request goes to the first middleware. And if everything is okay, next function is called. Then we go to the next middleware, and next middleware, for example, can see for some authorization header, and this middleware sees that there is no authorization header, and then REST send will be called, and the response will be returned to the front end. Yeah, and next function won't be called in that case. Yeah, we don't like to continue processing this request because we already sent the response. That's why we don't call next function. And for such request, only two middlewares will be executed, because like the second one doesn't call next function. Yeah, but if everything is okay, all middlewares will call next function, and then our handler, such as you saw here, yeah, this handler will do some stuff. Also, middleware can, for example, manipulate request object, mutate request object, and inside some middleware, we can add to request some specific thing. For example, we can add to request a user object. Yeah, if we have authorization, we'd like to authorize every request and understand who's sending the request, and we'll just, in some middleware, we just mutate request and add the user field to this object. And after that, in this handler, we'll be able to use request.user and get some data about the user. Can you list the common middleware we use in practice in practical project? To be honest, I don't remember the all tasks that you'll be need to implement, but I believe something related to logging, to authorization. Yeah, for example, Morgan that I've showed you can be used. Of course, JSON, like Express JSON, you will be needed to use, because without it, you won't be able to get the like body data. Okay, middleware is a function that executed after request and before response. It executed, yeah, Exactly. Actually, it can be executed after request, after response as well, but it's not like needed. It's not a common case. You're not limited to execute it before response, but you don't need it. Yeah, that's why the answer is yes, but you can. Okay, anything else? I see the question. How create server decide where to create server? When we run code from our computer and when we deploy our live server. Actually, create server like doesn't decide. It runs application like on the machine where you execute the code. When you run node.index.js and inside index.js you have create server, it means that the server will be created on your local machine. But when you have the same code on Heroku server and inside this Heroku server, someone will or Heroku under the hood will call like node index.js. That's why this server will be started on the Heroku server. So create server is not responsible for deciding where to start the server, but it's important where you run this server. For example, if I currently on my laptop start the server, you won't be able to connect to my server because you'll be needed to have my IP and I'll be needed to have some security rules configured properly to have the access to my laptop. But if you run the create server on your laptop, you'll be able to access your server by like localhost and so on. Okay, that's great. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, you can just raise a hand up if you are maybe writing the question in the chat. Uh, And of course, you will be able to ask questions after this lecture. You'll be able to add the question in this. But I'm not sure. Will you have access to this chat after this session? Okay. When do we receive info about the homework? And where is the deadline to finish one? So you will receive the information later today. I'll send it not immediately after the lecture, but today you will get the homework information, and the deadline is 1 week, if I'm not mistaken. So the deadline will be the day when you receive a new homework. So the new homework you will receive next Wednesday. It means that the next Wednesday is last date, is a deadline. Yeah, you will receive the homeworks, but later I will share you information how to how to run the homework, how to check the homework. We have some checker, and you'll be able to use it, and the test will be run on by using your server. The final project different from homework? Actually, I cannot answer this question now. Let me check the homeworks if I have the access now. Um, Okay. Yeah, I cannot answer now, but if I'm not mistaken, the last homework is like, you mean the final project of the course, yeah? So if yes, yeah, you'll have a specific. Um, I'm not sure about the final project. You'll have 3 tasks, yeah, but the last task will be like a harder one, and the deadline for this task will be more than 1 week. I believe maybe 10 days or even 2 weeks. I don't know about some big final project, but yeah, the only thing that I will ask you to do is 3 homeworks. Good. Okay. Okay, great. I don't see any questions in the chat. So yeah, actually that's it. Then yeah, I'll send the PDF of the presentation later in the chat, and yeah, you'll be able to download it. And yeah, thank you very much, guys. We'll see you in on the next week. Have a great weekends, and yeah, good luck with the homework. Thank you. Bye.